You know, there are some moments in life that don't just stay with you. They live inside you. Moments that change how you breathe, how you sleep, how you look at the people you once trusted with your whole heart. I used to think grief was the worst thing you could feel. Like when my mother died, it felt like my whole world cracked open. The house went quiet, and so did I. But that silence, it didn't stay peaceful for long. Because sometimes, what grief uncovers is so much worse than what it takes away. I remember the night everything shifted. It was raining outside. Not hard, just a soft, cold drizzle, tapping against the window like it was trying to remind me it was there. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, holding one of my mom's sweaters. It still smelled like her, like lavender and coffee, like home. And then my father walked in. And what he said that night, what he asked of me, it didn't feel like grief. It didn't feel like comfort. It felt like betrayal. But not the loud kind. Not the kind that screams in your face and slams doors. No. This one whispered. It crept in soft, like a shadow. Like a hug that holds on just a second too long. And that's when I realized something no one prepares you for. Sometimes the person you're grieving isn't the one who died. It's the one still standing in front of you. The one you thought you could trust. My name is Leah. And this is the story I've never told anyone, not my best friend, not my brother, not even the therapist I tried seeing once but couldn't open up to. This story has lived in my chest for years, burning a hole right through me. And now, I'm finally letting it out. Because maybe if I speak it out loud, someone out there, someone like you, might feel a little less alone in their silence too. Short pause. Slight catch in voice. And before we dive in, just know this. These stories I share here on Heartfelt Tales Unfold, they aren't just stories. They're buried truths. The kind you only tell in a whisper, in the dark, to someone who really wants to listen. So, if you're that person, if you believe in the power of raw honesty, in the messiness of human emotion, in the ache of complicated love, then don't go anywhere. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, because what I'm about to share with you will change the way you see grief, family, and what we call love. Forever. Mom died in the middle of the night. Peaceful, that's what they said. Her breathing just slowed. And then it stopped. I was the one who found her, still wrapped in her favorite knit blanket, the TV humming in the background. She always fell asleep watching those old nature documentaries. Birds and forests and whales under the sea. She said the sounds helped her feel calm, like the world was still beautiful even when life wasn't. But when I walked into the living room that morning, the only thing I heard was the buzz of the static. And silence. That heavy kind of silence, the kind that presses on your chest like it's trying to warn you something's wrong before your brain catches up. The days that followed were a blur. Not the dramatic, crying on the floor kind of blur. It was worse. It was numb. The funeral was small. Just a few family friends. Jaden barely said a word the whole time. He just kept his hood up and stared at the floor, hands in his pockets like he was holding himself together by the seams. And Dad? Edward stood like a statue the entire time. Didn't shed a tear. Didn't speak unless someone spoke to him. He shook hands, nodded, but his eyes were somewhere else. Honestly, they'd been somewhere else for years. Growing up, I never really knew my father. He was the kind of man who came home late, ate quietly, and fell asleep in the recliner with the remote still in his hand. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't kind either. Just distant. Mom used to say, "He's tired. He's working so hard for us." And maybe he was. But it always felt like he was just working to escape something. Or someone. Maybe even us. Still, Mom adored him. Even when he barely looked at her at dinner. Even when he forgot their anniversary 2 years in a row. Even when she'd cry alone in the bathroom after trying to get him to open up. I watched all of it, every single moment. Silently. Because that's what I learned to do. Stay small. Stay quiet. Don't stir anything. Jaden was different though. He was more like her, warm, emotional, always trying to fix things. But after she passed, something in him shut down completely. He stopped playing guitar, stopped going out. He'd lock himself in his room and blast music loud enough that you could feel it vibrating through the floorboards. I didn't have the heart to ask if he was okay, because I wasn't. And I didn't think I could handle carrying both of us. The house felt like a museum after she left. Like time had frozen, but not in a beautiful way. Like the air itself was heavy with all the things we didn't say when she was alive. Her shoes were still by the front door. Her coffee mug still in the sink. I couldn't bring myself to wash it. I started wearing her sweaters. I'd sit on the porch with her old journal, flipping through pages I couldn't read because the words made my chest ache. It was the only time I felt close to her. Dad. He started noticing that. At first, I thought he was just grieving. I mean, we all were. But then his eyes would linger. Not in a fatherly way. In a way I couldn't name. Not yet. He'd stand in doorways a little too long. His silence felt heavier than usual. More present, if that makes any sense. Like he wasn't just around me, he was watching me. One night, I came down to the kitchen around 2 a.m. to get water. And he was already there. Just sitting in the dark. No lights on, just the moonlight spilling through the blinds, hitting the curve of his shoulders. He looked up at me and said, "I keep expecting her to walk in." I nodded. Told him, me too. And I meant it. But then he said, "She was the heart of this house. Now it's just you and me." The way he said that, it made my stomach twist. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was raw from grief and reading into everything. That I was tired. That he was lonely. That we all were. But deep down, something didn't feel right. And if I had known what grief could twist a person into, if I had really understood what silence can hide, I swear to you, I would have packed a bag and run. Far. But I didn't. I stayed. I stayed because I still believed in the idea of family. Because I thought maybe we could hold each other through the worst of it. I was wrong. So wrong. And what came next? I never saw it coming. It was a Sunday afternoon. Quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, just heavy. I remember the sky was gray, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or just hang low and sad with the rest of us. I'd finally worked up the courage to start clearing out Mom's things. Not because I was ready. I wasn't. I don't think I ever really would be. But the silence in that house was starting to suffocate me, and her room felt like a ghost was still living in it. So I put on one of her old sweatshirts, opened the windows, and started going through her closet. Each item I touched felt like I was erasing her. Her scarf still smelled like her hair. Her reading glasses still had smudges on them. There was a half-finished bottle of perfume on her nightstand, and when I sprayed it just once into the air, it hit me so hard in the chest I had to sit down. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, hesitant. I didn't even need to turn around to know it was him. Dad. He stood in the doorway for a moment. Just stood there, watching me, holding a box I didn't recognize. It was plain, just a regular old cardboard box, but the way he clutched it to his chest like it was something sacred. I knew whatever was inside mattered. To him, at least. "I found this in the attic," he said. His voice sounded softer than usual. Not tired, intentional, measured. I nodded, expecting him to hand it to me. Instead, he walked over and placed it gently on the bed. Then he sat beside it, right on the edge, too close. I opened the box slowly. Inside were pictures. Old ones. Photos I'd never seen before. Mom and Dad in their 20s, her laughing, him smiling. Really smiling, the way I'd never seen in real life. There were letters too. One of them had her lipstick kiss on the envelope. It made my eyes sting. "I used to write her from deployment," he murmured. "She always kept them, even the stupid ones." Said they made her feel like I was close. His hand reached over then, casually, like it was nothing, and rested on top of mine. But it didn't feel casual. It didn't feel fatherly. It stayed there too long. Warm. Still. Pressing. I gently pulled my hand away and pretended to focus on the pictures. But inside, my stomach was starting to tighten. Then he said it, not with grief in his voice, but something else. Something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It's just you and me now, Leah. We have to take care of each other. I swallowed hard. Tried to smile. Tried to make it mean what I hoped it meant. Because the alternative? No. No, I wasn't ready to go there. Not yet. I told him I was tired. Said I needed to finish up later. And I left the room with my heart pounding. The rest of the day passed like a blur. I couldn't focus on anything, kept staring at the TV without watching. My skin felt too tight, like it didn't fit right anymore. Jaden stayed in his room the whole day, headphones on, the bass from his music thumping softly through the wall like a heartbeat I didn't know how to read. Dinner came and went. Dad didn't say much. But his eyes, they didn't leave me. And then, later that night, long after the lights were off, after I'd crawled into bed and tried to force sleep to come, I heard it. A soft knock, 3 gentle taps on my door. I froze. At first, I thought maybe it was Jaden. Maybe he wanted to talk. Maybe he couldn't sleep either. But then the door creaked open slowly, and I saw the silhouette. Tall, broad, still. It was him. Leah, he whispered. You awake? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart was thudding so loud I was sure he could hear it. He stepped inside, closed the door gently behind him, and what he said next. It made my stomach twist in a way I didn't know was possible. Like something inside me snapped in two. Because in that moment, every line I thought was unbreakable shattered. And nothing would ever be the same after that. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I just laid there, eyes wide open, staring at the cracks in the ceiling like they were going to give me answers. He hadn't touched me. Not really. But what he said, what he meant, it lingered in the room like a fog that wouldn't lift. I kept replaying the words, over and over, trying to twist them into something else, trying to make them fatherly, innocent. But they weren't. He stood at the foot of my bed, in the dark, and said, sometimes I look at you and see her. Same eyes. Same way you hold your head when you're sad. Then he took a step closer and said, I don't want to feel alone anymore. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My body went stiff, like my brain and my heart disconnected in that moment. And when he finally left the room, quietly, like nothing had happened, I felt like I had just walked through a storm without moving an inch. The next morning, I avoided him completely. Made up an excuse to take a walk. Said I needed to clear my head. But the truth? I was afraid to look at him. Afraid to look at myself. I felt sick. Like something had been ripped open inside me. Something dark. Something I didn't know how to name. And I hated him. God, I did. But what scared me even more was how I also hated myself for not walking away. For not yelling. For not slamming the door in his face. For freezing. For staying. I kept thinking about that night when Mom died. How he held me in the kitchen, arms around my shoulders, my tears soaking into his shirt. He didn't say much, but it was the first time in years he actually held me. And back then, I told myself he was just mourning. That we both were. That maybe something in him had cracked open, that maybe I was finally seeing a version of my father who felt something. But now, looking back, I wonder if that was the beginning. If he'd been trying to fill that hole in his heart with something I was never meant to give. And still, even after what he said, even after the way he looked at me, part of me kept making excuses for him. He's grieving. He doesn't know what he's doing. We're all broken right now. Those thoughts became like background noise, the kind you don't notice until it's too loud to ignore. I didn't tell Jaden. Didn't tell anyone. Because what would I even say? That my father said something strange? That maybe, just maybe, he was crossing a line I didn't want to believe was real? And what if I was wrong? What if I was misreading him? What if this was just what grief looked like for him, and I was the one making it ugly? I started avoiding him more. Only came downstairs when I knew he wasn't around. I started locking my door. Didn't even think about it, just started doing it, like it was instinct. But nothing felt safe anymore. Not the house. Not his eyes. Not even me. Because I didn't trust myself to see clearly anymore. Was it affection or manipulation? Was he trying to connect with me as a daughter? Or was he using me to replace the woman he lost? I couldn't tell. And that was the worst part. Because when love and grief and loneliness all start blending together, it gets hard to know where one ends and the other begins. I started having these dreams, twisted versions of our life. Mom was still alive, but I could never reach her. She'd just stand at the end of the hallway, watching me, disappointed, silent. And I'd wake up drenched in sweat, feeling like I was drowning in guilt for something I hadn't even done yet. That's the part no one talks about. The before. The almost. The confusion that comes when a line hasn't been crossed, but you can feel the ground cracking beneath your feet. And every step feels like you might fall straight through. It didn't stop. After that night, after he stood at my door and whispered words that turned my stomach, things didn't go back to normal. But they didn't explode either. They just shifted. Quietly. Dangerously. He started showing up more. Little things at first. Like making me tea in the evenings. He'd knock, hand me a cup without saying much, then sit across from me like we were old friends, just two people sipping comfort in a house that had forgotten how to feel warm. He'd ask if I was sleeping okay, if I needed anything. He'd tell me he was proud of me for holding it together. At first, I convinced myself it was progress. That maybe we were healing. That maybe we were finding our way back to something safe. But it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. Because slowly, his words started changing. So did his touches. They weren't fatherly. Not anymore. A hand on my shoulder that lingered. A brush of his fingers against my lower back as I passed him in the hallway. A hug that held on too long. I'd stiffen. But I didn't say anything. Didn't push him away. I just froze. And every time. After every small violation that didn't quite cross the line, I'd retreat into my head, desperately trying to rewrite it. He's just lonely. He doesn't realize. He's grieving. But the truth was, I think he did know. I think he always knew. Because there was a look in his eyes. A softness that didn't belong there. A hunger that had no business being pointed at me. The late-night conversations became a pattern. He'd knock gently on my door around midnight, ask if I was still awake, and sit on the edge of my bed. He'd talk about Mom, how she used to sit in that very spot, how she'd cry when no one was watching, how he wished he'd loved her better. And I'd just sit there, wrapped in her sweater, nodding, swallowing the lump in my throat, because part of me felt sorry for him. He looked broken, truly broken. But the lines, they were bleeding together. One night, he brought in an old photo. It was from their wedding. Mom looked radiant, young and glowing, and so in love. He sat next to me, held the picture up to my face and whispered, "You look just like her." Then he started to cry. Real tears. Silent. Steady. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I was supposed to comfort him, or run, or scream, or disappear. Instead, I reached out, put a hand on his shoulder, and he leaned into me, pressed his forehead to my neck, and just stayed there, breathing me in, holding me like I was something precious and familiar and lost. And again, I didn't move. I kept telling myself, he's grieving. But every time I believed that, every time I let it be enough of a reason to stay quiet, I lost a piece of myself. A piece I'm still trying to find. I stopped going out. Stopped calling my friends. I didn't want to lie, but I didn't want to tell the truth either. Because what was the truth? That I was being emotionally swallowed whole by the man who raised me? That I couldn't breathe in my own home anymore, but I didn't know how to leave? Jaden didn't say much during those days. But he watched me. I could feel it. Like he knew something was off. And I think maybe that's why I stayed. Because I didn't want to leave him behind. I thought I could protect him. From everything. From Dad. From me. But I couldn't even protect myself. And then came the night that broke whatever thin barrier was left. It was late. Almost 2 in the morning. I was sitting in the living room, curled up in Mom's old blanket, trying to lose myself in an old book I'd read 100 times. Something familiar. Something safe. I didn't hear him come down the stairs. But suddenly he was there. Right behind me. He sat beside me, too close again. And I didn't have the strength to move. Not that night. He stared at the fireplace for a long time before speaking. And when he did, his voice was calm. Clear. I miss her, he said. I miss what it felt like to be seen, to be touched, to be needed. I didn't say anything. My hands gripped the blanket tighter. Then he looked at me. And I felt it in my bones before he even said it. He said, "We don't have to be alone, Leah. Not anymore." And in that moment, my whole body went cold. Because there it was. Spoken. No more pretending. No more hiding behind grief or silence or carefully chosen words. He said it. Out loud. What he wanted. And I didn't leave. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I froze. Just like I always did. And in that stillness, in that horrible, breathless stillness, something inside me broke. Not all at once. Not loudly. Just quietly. Like the slow crack of porcelain. Invisible to the eye, but fatal just the same. That night, after he said it, after those words left his mouth like they had every right to exist between us, I sat frozen. The world felt still, but my body was screaming. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. My palms were sweaty, my mouth dry. My thoughts? They weren't even thoughts. They were just flashes. Images. Memories. Fear. I wanted to believe I'd get up. That I'd yell. That I'd tell him how sick, how twisted he was. But I didn't. I sat there, wrapped in Mom's blanket, and all I could think was, how did we get here? How did the man who raised me, who kissed me goodnight when I was 5, who held my bike seat steady when I learned to ride, who once chased away monsters under my bed, how did that man become this? And then he moved. Subtle. Like a whisper. He reached out, his hand brushing against my cheek. It was soft. Tender. Wrong. I flinched. But he didn't stop. His thumb traced just beneath my eye. Wiped away a tear I hadn't even noticed was falling. He said, "You don't have to cry. You're not doing anything wrong. This could be love too." And that was when something snapped. Not in him. In me. I stood up so fast the blanket fell to the floor. My chair screeched across the wooden floorboards. I backed away from him like he'd just turned into a stranger, because he had. "Don't," I whispered. And then louder, "Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again." His face changed then. Just for a second. From soft sorrow to something sharper. Like I had broken the spell. I saw it. That flicker. That awareness. And suddenly everything felt real. Undeniable. Dangerous. I ran. Out of the room. Through the hallway. Past Jaden's closed door. I don't even remember opening the front door. Just remember the cold hitting me like a slap. Bare feet on the porch. Winter air biting at my skin. And me breathing like I'd just escaped a burning building. I stood there, in the dark, under a sky with no stars, chest heaving, heart racing like it was trying to outrun the shame crawling up my spine. But I hadn't gone anywhere. Not really. I was still there. Still his daughter. Still in that house. Still bound to this family by blood and silence. I remember wrapping my arms around myself, not to keep warm, but to hold myself together. because I felt like I was falling apart in slow motion. And even then, even with everything that had just happened, I still heard it. That awful little whisper in the back of my mind. Maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe he's just broken. Maybe I'm overreacting. But no, I wasn't. I knew I wasn't. I stayed outside for what felt like hours, until my feet went numb, until the shaking stopped, until I could feel my breath again. Then I walked back inside. Quiet. Careful. The house was dark. No footsteps. No voices. Just the soft hum of the fridge and the tick of the clock on the wall, like the world didn't even notice what had just happened. I went straight to my room, locked the door, sat on the floor with my back pressed against it like that would keep him out. And I cried, but that wasn't the end. The worst part? It came after. After that night, I didn't speak to him. Didn't even let him see me. I started avoiding the house altogether. I'd leave early in the morning, before he was up, and wander around town with no real place to go. The park. The library. The bus stop on the edge of town where no one really waited for anything. I didn't eat. Didn't sleep. Didn't speak to anyone. I just floated. My body was still there, but my mind was somewhere else, somewhere far, far away. When I did come home, I'd wait until it was late. Really late. Until I was sure he was in his room, until the lights were off, until even the fridge hum felt too loud. And then I'd tiptoe up the stairs like a ghost trying not to be seen. He never came to my door again. But what scared me more than anything was how he acted like nothing had happened. Like none of it was real. He still made tea. Still cooked dinner like everything was fine. Still left the porch light on for me, like he was doing me a favor. And the silence between us, it wasn't awkward. It was deliberate. Calculated. As if we had made some unspoken agreement to bury what happened. Deep. But I hadn't agreed to anything. I was just surviving. And Jaden. God. Jaden changed too. He wouldn't look at me. Not really. Not like he used to. If I walked into the room, he'd leave. If I sat at the table, he'd grab his plate and take it upstairs. At first I thought it was just the grief. We were all unraveling in our own way. But then one night, he passed me in the hallway and he flinched. Just slightly. Barely noticeable. But I saw it, felt it, and I wondered. Did he know? Did he hear something that night? Or worse, had he seen? The guilt was unbearable. Because suddenly, I wasn't just a daughter trying to survive her father's broken love. I was a sister trying to protect someone who maybe didn't need me anymore. Who maybe didn't want me anymore. The few times we were all in the same room, at dinner mostly, the silence wasn't just uncomfortable. It was loud. Suffocating. He'd ask how school was. Jaden would grunt. I'd say fine. And we'd all stare at our plates like they were going to rescue us. One night, he reached for my hand across the table. Just for a second. Not even touching, just reaching. And I flinched. Hard. Jaden saw. And he pushed his chair back so suddenly it scraped against the floor. He grabbed his dish and disappeared. Didn't even rinse it. Just left it in the sink like a goodbye. I started getting these episodes. Panic attacks, I guess. That's what they'd be called now. My chest would tighten. My vision would blur. I'd be sitting on the bathroom floor, shaking, trying to remember how to breathe. Trying to convince myself I wasn't trapped. That the walls weren't closing in. But they were. Inside me. Closing. Folding. And the dreams. God, the dreams were the worst. They weren't always nightmares. Sometimes they were peaceful, at first. Mom would be there. Smiling. Cooking. Humming some old song from the radio. But I could never speak to her. I'd try. My lips would move, but no sound came out. And she'd just stare at me. Her smile fading. Her eyes hurt. Like she knew. Like she saw. Like she was watching me become something I didn't recognize. Someone she wouldn't be proud of. And I'd wake up gasping, fighting to shake the image of her face out of my mind. But it never left. Not really. It was always there. In the kitchen. In the hallway. In the smell of her perfume, still clinging to the old coat in the closet. She was everywhere. And yet nowhere. And I was just trying to make it to morning. 1 hour at a time. One breath at a time. One lie at a time. Because pretending was safer than remembering. And silence was easier than truth. There were nights I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in my hand, thumb hovering over the screen, debating if I should call someone. Report him. Tell someone. But every time I got close, I'd stop. Because what would I even say? That my father said things he shouldn't? That he looked at me like I was someone else? That he touched me in ways that weren't technically criminal, but felt like they stole pieces of me anyway? Would they believe me? Would they call it trauma? Or would they call it confusion? Would they ask me what I did to encourage it? Would they ask why I didn't leave sooner? Why I stayed silent? Because silence became my prison. But also my protection. I started questioning everything, not just him. Me. Was I weak? Was I complicit? Was I broken too? Sometimes I'd stare at my reflection in the mirror and ask myself, if you walked away from that night untouched, did anything really happen? And every time, my stomach would answer for me. Because it did happen. All of it. In words. In gestures. In silence. It happened. And one night, I finally broke. He caught me in the kitchen. I had come down to grab my coat and keys. I was planning to disappear for a few hours. Clear my head. Just breathe. But he was there. Leaning against the counter, arms folded like he'd been waiting. He asked where I was going. I lied. Said I was meeting a friend. He smiled. And that smile, it broke me. Because it was the kind of smile you give someone you think you have power over. It was smug. It was wrong. So I snapped. I looked him in the eye for the first time in weeks and said, "You're not grieving. You're feeding off the broken pieces of someone who trusted you." And there it was, my truth. Sharp. Unapologetic. Tear-stained, but standing. He didn't argue. Didn't shout. He just looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Maybe not fear of me, but fear of what I'd finally found. My voice. I went upstairs that night and packed a bag. Didn't take much. Just a few clothes. Mom's journal. And the photo of her on their wedding day, the one where she was smiling before the years had taken that light from her eyes. I left before the sun came up. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't leave a note. Just walked out the front door barefoot, carrying only what I could hold and what I couldn't bear to leave behind. And that was the moment I left my childhood behind. Not just the house. Not just the man who raised me. But the whole illusion I had spent years clinging to, that family means safety, that parents always protect, that love can't hurt you like that. And still, even now, years later, sometimes I wonder, was I ever truly a daughter? Or just a shadow of someone he used to love, trying to be enough to bring her back? If you've ever experienced something that felt too twisted to name, you're not alone. If you've ever sat in the dark, unsure if what happened was real because no one ever touched you but you still feel ruined, I see you. If you've questioned yourself, your memory, your silence, I have too. I don't have all the answers. Not even close. But I know this, staying silent didn't protect me. It only made the shame feel heavier. And now, I'm done carrying it alone. So I'm asking you, would you have done something differently? Would you have screamed? Would you have run? Or would you have stayed frozen too, caught between love, fear, and a silence that swallowed you whole? Let me know in the comments. You don't have to share your full story if you're not ready. But maybe, just maybe, leaving a few words might help someone else find theirs. And tell me this. Do you think grief can twist love into something unrecognizable? Into something it was never supposed to be? Because I used to think love had limits. But now I wonder. What happens when the person who says, "I love you," is the same one who breaks you. If you want more stories like this, not polished, not easy, but true, then please subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. This is where the stories we bury come to light. Some fathers protect. They stand in the doorway when the world tries to hurt you. They hold you when your heart breaks. They remind you, just by being there, that you are safe. And some destroy in the name of love, not with fists, not with rage, but with twisted affection, with lingering stares, with quiet invasions wrapped in soft words, with grief that turns poisonous because it refuses to stay in its place. And sometimes, the greatest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the ones who claim they're hurting too. The ones who whisper comfort while stealing something you didn't even realize was yours to protect. Your boundaries, your sense of self, your childhood. I don't know if what I went through has a name, and maybe it doesn't need one, because the damage was real either way. And the healing? It's still happening. This was my story. Maybe it's someone else's too. Maybe it's yours. And if it is, you're not alone anymore.